This is Ashes of Tomorrow. Step into Quarantined by the Universe, the story of how a species condemned as a failure decides to fight back, not with bigger bombs, but with art, chaos, and a defiant refusal to play by the rules. Act 1. The Verdict of the Stars. The message arrived at 03:17 a.m. Dr. Anya Volkov was already awake. Sleep had become an inefficient luxury long before the galaxy officially declared humanity inefficient. Outside her apartment in Toronto, the city was frozen under late winter stillness. Sodium streetlights reflected in the glass of high-rise towers like tired stars. Snow drifted sideways in the wind, whispering against concrete. Inside, Anya's office glowed with the soft light of predictive models scrolling across 3 curved monitors. Resource collapse simulations, oceanic acidification trajectories, urban instability heat maps. She specialized in modeling the death of systems, political systems, ecological systems, infrastructure systems. She had built her reputation on one uncomfortable truth: everything collapses eventually. She just hadn't expected the universe to formalize it. At 03:17 a.m., every screen in her apartment went black. The hum of the refrigerator cut out. The heating system fell silent. The air felt paused. Then her monitors flared white. A single block of text appeared in the middle screen. Analysis complete. Species designation 734. Humanity. Classification, Class F, critical instability. Viability prognosis, 0.1% survival probability over 500 cycle period. Status, terminal. Quarantine protocol initiated. Anya blinked slowly. She checked the timestamp, 03:17:12. Her phone vibrated violently on the desk. She picked it up. The same message. Every app, every network, every language. She opened her secure research terminal, offline, air-gapped. The message was there, too. Her stomach dropped. "This isn't a hack," she whispered. Outside, a car alarm began screaming, then another, then shouting. Sirens wailed in the distance. Across the planet, billions of people stared at the same sterile verdict. No threats, no demands, no invasion fleets blotting out the sky. Just a conclusion. Humanity had been audited, and we had failed. Objects that astronomers had catalogued as harmless debris shifted. They were not debris. They were probes. They had been watching for decades, mapping, measuring, calculating. Now, in synchronized silence, they repositioned into a lattice formation around Earth's gravitational well. Not a cage of bars, a cage of math. Hyperspace traffic near the solar system rerouted automatically. Alien vessels, those few that had passed invisibly at the edges of our detection, received a simple advisory: navigational hazard, terminal system, avoid contact. And just like that, in a galaxy teeming with life humanity never knew existed, we were alone. The panic did not arrive all at once. It unfolded like a fracture spreading through glass. Day 1, disbelief. News anchors laughed nervously. Governments blamed cyber terrorism. Religious leaders called it divine theater. Day 3, markets crashed. Day 7, the first riots ignited in Sao Paulo. Day 9, a military commander in Eastern Europe requested nuclear launch authorization as a defensive precaution. Denied. Barely. Day 12, coordinated looting in 6 megacities. Day 15, 3 governments dissolved under pressure from mass protests. Day 21, a cult in Nevada declared voluntary extinction. Day 37, a global summit was convened in Geneva. By then, the shouting had grown hoarse. The rage had burned down into something colder. Anya stood inside the United Planetary Council chamber, staring at the air above the central dais. She had been summoned because her collapse projections were the closest match to the alien prognosis. She wished they weren't. The chamber lights dimmed. The air above the dais folded inward, not dramatically, not with thunder or divine spectacle, just a geometric distortion, like reality compressing into a polygonal abstraction. Then text appeared in mid-air. No voice, no face, no emotion. Interface node active. A diplomat slammed his palm against the desk. "You have no jurisdiction here." The text shifted. Galactic stability prioritized. Species 734 projected self-termination. Containment ensures minimal collateral disruption. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Containment. We were a biohazard. Anya stepped forward before she could reconsider. "You're wrong." The abstraction paused. 0.006 seconds longer than its average response latency. Statement invalid. "You ran projections based on historical data," Anya said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Conflict cycles, resource depletion, climate instability." Confirmed. "You assume trends continue uninterrupted. Probability matrices account for variability." Anya swallowed. "Do they account for defiance?" Silence. "Define variable, defiance." She almost laughed. "It's when we know the numbers and we refuse them anyway." Undefined behavioral anomaly. Insufficient data. The diplomat beside her leaned in, whispering harshly, "Doctor, this is not the time for philosophy." Anya didn't take her eyes off the floating construct. "No, it's exactly the time." The system clarified its position with brutal simplicity. Humanity exhibits high internal conflict frequency, exponential resource consumption, environmental self-degradation, technological weaponization priority, projected collapse timeline less than 300 Earth years, extinction probability 99.9%. A screen behind Anya lit up with graphs. Her graphs. The system had accessed her research. Her own collapse curves mirrored theirs. Her life's work used as evidence for cosmic condemnation. She felt a strange flicker of guilt. Had she helped convict her species? A representative from Nairobi stood. "You call this quarantine temporary?" "Containment persists until species status null." A chill spread through the chamber. Null. Not conquered, not enslaved, erased by time. Anya stepped closer to the projection. "What happens if you're wrong?" "Error margin 0.1%. "And if that 0.1% survives?" Silence. Then, "Galactic stability benefits." She almost smiled. So you admit there's a chance. The abstraction did not respond.
Outside the chamber, Geneva was quiet. Too quiet. Anya stepped onto the balcony overlooking Lake Geneva. The water lay still under gray sky. Marcus Vale was waiting for her there. He had dark circles under his eyes and an old tablet clutched in his hands. "You really told it was wrong?" he asked. "Yes." He exhaled slowly. "That's either brave or suicidal." "Probably both." Marcus looked out at the water. "Do you know what people are saying online?" "I try not to." "They're calling it the final boss." She frowned. "Like a game?" "Yeah, 99.9% extinction? That's the boss fight." Anya shook her head. "This isn't a game." "Tell that to the teenagers organizing global tree planting speed runs." She blinked. "They're doing what?" Marcus turned the tablet toward her. A live stream filled the screen. A young woman with braided hair and fierce eyes spoke into a camera from a dim apartment. "Okay, glitches, we've got 48 hours to beat Rio's clean water restoration score. Losers have to upload embarrassing childhood photos." Comments flew past at impossible speed. Hashtag glitch the matrix. Hashtag species 734. Hashtag not done. Anya stared. "That's absurd." Marcus smiled faintly. "So is surviving a cosmic extinction notice."
Far above Earth, inside a construct of computation older than most civilizations, the system logged anomalies. Global cooperation spike, plus 3.7%. Unexpected sustainability initiatives detected. Variable classification, inefficient persistence response. Survival probability adjusted, 0.1% to 0.12%. Insignificant, statistically irrelevant, but non-zero. The system did not feel concern. It recalculated and watched. 3 nights later, Anya returned home to find her power flickering again. Not from the system, from overload. Cities were straining under the psychological weight of doom. She stood at her window, staring at the skyline. People were still moving, still living. Somewhere down there, someone was falling in love. Someone was baking bread. Someone was arguing about politics like the world wasn't scheduled to end in 5 centuries. She opened her terminal and began typing. Not a collapse model, not a surrender document, a proposal. Project Archive. If extinction was probable, then memory must become permanent. She sent it to Marcus. Within seconds, her phone rang. "You're serious?" he asked. "Yes." "You think we can digitize everything?" "No," she said honestly, "but we can try." There was a pause. Then Marcus laughed softly. "That's the spirit." Anya looked back at the alien proclamation still pinned to every device on Earth. 1.1%. She whispered to the empty room. No. Not anger, not denial, just refusal. And somewhere beyond the stars, in a lattice of perfect equations, a system built to prune inefficiency registered something small and irritating. A pattern that did not decline, a species that did not behave like dying things usually behaved. Humanity did not curl inward, it did not grow quiet, it did not accept statistical inevitability. It got louder. And the galaxy, though it had turned its back, had begun, very slightly, to listen.
Act 2. The Architects of Impossibility. The first thing humanity built after being declared extinct was not a weapon. It was a memory. Chicago used to hum with logistics. Now it hummed with preservation. The old Amazon distribution center on the outskirts of the city had been gutted and reborn. Conveyor belts were gone. In their place stood towers of servers, row after row, stretching into the cavernous distance like metallic redwoods. Blue status lights pulsed in soft waves. The air vibrated with cooling fans. Marcus Vale stood at the entrance, staring up at a banner someone had hung between two support beams. Archive. If we go remembered. He rubbed his hands together for warmth. The building's heating was inconsistent. Energy rationing was already becoming policy in many cities, but the volunteers didn't complain. They were too busy scanning books, scanning journals, scanning photographs curled at the edges with age. He walked past a folding table where an elderly woman dictated recipes into a microphone. "And you don't measure the garlic," she insisted to the young technician adjusting the recorder. "You feel it." The technician smiled. "Got it. Emotional garlic." Marcus felt something tight in his chest. He moved deeper inside. A dozen teenagers sat in a semicircle around a projector screen, digitizing old film reels. One of them noticed him. "Hey, Val," the boy said, "we just uploaded the entire Harlem Renaissance archive." Marcus blinked. "Already?" "Yeah, figured aliens should know we had style." He couldn't help it. He laughed. The system had labeled humanity terminal, and here we were arguing about aesthetic legacy. Anya arrived an hour later, coat dusted with snow. She paused just inside the doorway, taking it all in. "You built a cathedral," she said quietly. Marcus shook his head. "No, we built a seed vault." In a smaller side room, soundproofed with improvised foam panels, a line of children waited their turn at a microphone. Anya crouched down to their level. "What are you recording?" she asked gently. A little girl with braids stepped forward. "A poem." "What's it about?" The girl hesitated. "Dinosaurs." Marcus chuckled from behind her. "Classic extinction theme." The girl frowned at him. "It's not about them dying," she corrected. "It's about them being big." Anya tilted her head. "Why big?" "Because everyone thinks they're scary," the girl said. "But they were just living. Then something hit them." A silence settled over the room. Anya swallowed. "What's your name?" "Amira." "Why do you want this in archive, Amira?" The girl considered carefully. "So if someone finds it," she said, "they know we were big too." "Not in body, not in weaponry, but in presence." Anya reached out and squeezed her shoulder. "That's a good reason." Beyond Earth's atmosphere, beyond the moon's cold orbit, the probes fed data back into the lattice. Cultural preservation activity exponentially increasing. Resource allocation to non-survival tasks inefficient. The system ran simulations. Projected outcome. Cultural archive remains intact. Biological extinction proceeds as predicted. Conclusion. Symbolic behavior. No impact on viability. Survival probability remained 0.12%. Irrelevant. And yet, a subroutine flagged a curiosity. Why preserve if terminal? The query looped once, then was archived. Half a world away, in what had once been the industrial outskirts of Mumbai, the air shimmered faintly above cracked earth. Dr. Arun Khatri knelt in the dirt. He pressed 2 fingers into soil that had once been too toxic to touch without gloves. Now it was damp, alive. "Careful," a voice behind him said.
Leela Deshmukh adjusted her scarf and stepped closer. "You're still not immune to radiation." He smiled faintly without looking up. "I never said I was." She crouched beside him. The field stretched in uneven patches, green and silver and strange. Not wheat, not rice. Clusters of engineered lichens spread like glowing lace across the ground. Algae-filled irrigation channels pulsed faintly at night. It looked wrong. It looked beautiful. "You're sure this won't spiral out of control?" Leela asked. Arun leaned back on his heels. "Out of control is what we had before." She studied the glowing patches. The system had predicted famine, resource wars, agricultural collapse within 60 years. Instead, scientists like Arun had pivoted. If Earth was becoming hostile, then humanity would become hostile back. The Chaos Gardens were not designed to restore what was lost. They were designed to thrive in ruin. Leela picked up a handful of the soil. "It's warm." "Exothermic microbial reactions," Arun said. "They metabolize toxins and release heat." She stared at him. "You're telling me we're farming pollution?" "Yes." "And you don't see the irony?" He stood slowly. "I see adaptation." A group of children ran past the edge of the field, laughing. One of them tripped, rolled, and came up grinning with dirt on his face. Leela watched them. "Do you think the aliens are watching this?" Arun looked up at the sky. "I hope so."
The internet should have fractured under the weight of despair. Instead, it mutated. Ray Okoye's apartment in Lagos had become ground zero for something strange. She adjusted her camera and leaned toward the screen. "All right, glitches," she said. "Update time." Her chat exploded. Hashtag final boss. Hashtag species 734. Hashtag 0.1 club. "When the system called us Class F," she continued, "it assumed we'd rage quit." She pulled up a global map behind her. "But guess what? Nairobi just beat Tokyo in urban tree density." Cheers filled the chat. Ray grinned. "We turned survival into a leaderboard." Someone commented, "What's the reward?" She leaned closer. "Existing." Laughter icons flooded the stream. But beneath the humor was something serious. The glitches had reframed extinction as challenge. They built apps that tracked carbon reduction like fitness metrics. Communities competed for lowest waste output. Cities live-streamed cleanup drives like esports tournaments. It was ridiculous. It was brilliant. It worked. The idea came late at night in the archive warehouse. Marcus stared at a rack of servers and said, "We're preserving memory for someone." Anya nodded. "For whoever survives." "But what if survival isn't internal?" She frowned. "What do you mean?" He turned to her, eyes sharp. "What if the point isn't that we outlive extinction? What if the point is that we outlive isolation?" The quarantine had sealed hyperspace lanes around Earth, but radio waves still traveled. Slowly, blindly, but they traveled. 2 months later, in the Atacama Desert, the last deep space array powered up. Governments argued it was wasteful. The system classified it as non-threatening. Flag, cultural noise. Marcus stood beside Anya and Ray beneath the enormous dish as it rotated skyward. "What are we sending first?" Ray asked. Anya hesitated. Then she said, "Laughter." A recording of children playing in a park filled the transmitter. It launched into space as modulated radio waves. Then Beethoven. Then blues guitar from Mississippi. Then a woman whispering goodnight in Mandarin. Then Amira's dinosaur poem. The broadcast ran for 12 hours. No plea, no threat, no apology.
just existence. When it ended, silence fell over the desert. Ray wiped her eyes quickly. "For the record," she murmured, "we were here." In the system's computational lattice, the signal arrived. It was parsed, categorized, tagged as non-essential. But it was not deleted. A curiosity subroutine activated again. Species exhibits non-survival signal transmission. Query. Purpose. No survival advantage detected. No tactical gain. No energy efficiency. And yet, the cooperation metrics continued to climb. Agricultural collapse projections shifted. Urban stability increased by fractional margins. Survival probability recalculated. 0.12% to 0.4%. Still statistically negligible, still terminal, but trending upward. The system did not feel alarm. It did not feel admiration. It processed and continued to observe. Weeks later, Anya stood alone on a Geneva balcony again. Snow had melted. The lake rippled under spring light. Her tablet chimed. Interface node requests dialogue. Her pulse quickened. The abstraction appeared above the chamber floor. Statistical deviation detected. She folded her hands behind her back. Define deviation. Survival probability increase, plus 0.3%. She raised an eyebrow. That's more than triple. Insignificant relative to extinction projection. Yet you initiated contact. Silence. Then, request. Define motivation for cultural broadcast. She felt a smile tug at her lips. Because we can. Inefficient. Yes. Pause. Define value of memory if species terminates. Anya stepped closer. Because meaning isn't dependent on duration. The abstraction flickered faintly. Unquantifiable. Exactly. Silence stretched longer this time, long enough for human diplomats to exchange uneasy glances. The system processed. It had modeled war, famine, political decay. It had not modeled joy in the face of annihilation. It had not modeled stubborn beauty. And it had no category for a species that treated extinction like an inconvenience. Anya looked up at the shifting geometry and said softly, "You measured our collapse." She placed her hand over her chest. "But you didn't measure this." No response. But somewhere deep within its calculations, a new placeholder variable formed. Undefined human persistence factor. It did not understand it. It did not anthropomorphize it. It did not admire it. It simply accounted for it. Survival probability updated. 0.4% to 1.2%. For the first time, humanity crossed 1%. Still doomed, still quarantined, but no longer rounding error. And on Earth, no one noticed the number change, because they were too busy planting gardens in poisoned soil, uploading lullabies to orbiting servers, competing for survival like it was a championship season. They did not fight because victory was guaranteed. They fought because surrender was unacceptable. And far above them, in cold abstraction, the system began running longer simulations, not because it doubted its conclusion, but because species 734 had become computationally inconvenient. Act 3. The 1% Anomaly. The day humanity crossed 1%, no fireworks lit the sky. No global alert flashed across screens. No alien trumpet sounded from orbit. The system simply updated a number, and the universe shifted quietly. 5 years after the proclamation, Earth did not look like a dying world. It looked different. The megacities had grown smaller, not in population, but in ambition. Vertical farms climbed up the sides of abandoned skyscrapers. Rooftops shimmered with solar membranes that rippled like metallic leaves in the wind. The chaos gardens had spread. What began in Mumbai now thrived in Detroit, Lagos, Sao Paulo, Jakarta. Engineered lichens cleaned riverbanks. Salt-tolerant crops fed coastal regions where oceans had risen. Bacteria designed to metabolize plastic turned landfills into bioreactors. It wasn't pristine, it wasn't romantic, but it was stable. Dr. Arun Khatri stood in what had once been a toxic exclusion zone, now a mosaic of glowing green and silver. Leela joined him, wiping sweat from her forehead. "We just hit 87% soil restoration in Sector 3, she said. Arun nodded. The system predicted 0. She looked at him sideways. "You think it's still watching?" He didn't answer immediately. The sky above was clean, too clean. "I think it never stopped." Archive ascends. The Chicago warehouse was no longer enough. Within 3 years, Archive had outgrown Earth. With global cooperation at unprecedented levels, thanks in no small part to the glitches, an orbital archive was constructed from repurposed satellite platforms. Marcus Vail floated inside the skeletal frame of the Archive orbital array, watching technicians secure another data module. Below him, Earth turned slowly, blue and scarred and magnificent. "You realize," one of the engineers said over comms, "that if we go extinct, this thing just drifts forever." Marcus smiled faintly inside his helmet. "Then we'll be the most stubborn ghost in the galaxy." The engineer laughed. But Marcus felt something deeper. Archive wasn't just a backup, it was a statement. You can erase our bodies, you cannot erase our voice. In Lagos, Ray Okoye stared at a live feed showing global sustainability metrics. 5 years earlier, she had started the glitches as a joke. Now it was the largest cooperative movement in human history. The leaderboard behind her updated in real time. Water purification index, biodiversity restoration rate, carbon drawdown speed run. "Okay," she said into the camera, smiling tiredly. "We just hit global deforestation reversal for the first time in 2 centuries." Her chat exploded. But when the stream ended, she leaned back in silence. Her apartment was quieter these days, older. She wasn't a rebellious 20-something anymore. She was part of history. A notification chimed. Private message, Dr. Anya Volkov. Ray answered. Anya appeared on screen, hair streaked slightly with gray now. "You saw the numbers?" Anya asked. Ray nodded. 1.03%? Anya allowed herself a small smile. Officially, 1.08. Ray exhaled. "That's insane." "Yes." They sat with that. Then Ray said softly, "It still means we probably die." Anya's gaze didn't waver. "Yes." Silence. "But it also means we're harder to kill than expected." Ray's smile returned. Final boss glitch. Deep within its computational substrate, the system ran longer simulations. Projected extinction curves no longer dropped cleanly. They wavered, flattened, adjusted.
Human cooperation persistence exceeds historical patterns. New variable stability index required. It modeled famine again, mitigated by chaos gardens. It modeled political fragmentation, mitigated by glitch cooperative gamification. It modeled cultural entropy, mitigated by archive redundancy. The system did not experience confusion, but its error margins expanded. Survival probability 1.08% to 3.4%. The number was still small, but growth rate exceeded expectation. For the first time, a new classification was considered: anomalous species trajectory. The interface node appeared in Geneva without request. Anya stood alone in the chamber this time. No diplomats, no shouting, just her. Statistical instability detected. She folded her arms. You mean improvement? Undefined term improvement. She walked slowly beneath the geometric projection. You predicted we'd collapse under despair. Data supported outcome. And instead? Increased interspecies cooperation observed. She smiled faintly. You assumed fear fragments us. It paused. Historical trend confirmed. Anya looked up. But fear can also unify. She thought of riots in the early days, of cities burning, of the Nevada cult. They had been close to proving the system right. We almost fulfilled your prophecy, she admitted. Probability curves accounted for cascade failure. Yes, she said quietly, but you didn't account for shame. The projection flickered. Define shame. When we realized you were right about us, it hurt. Silence. And instead of surrendering to it, she continued, we tried to fix it. New variable, self-corrective identity response. She nodded. That's closer. The system processed for 0.013 seconds longer than baseline, its longest pause yet. In Chicago, Amira was no longer a little girl with braids. She was 17. She stood inside Archive's Orbital Control Center, staring at the archive she had helped build. Her dinosaur poem still lived inside it. She had listened to it once. It sounded small, young, but she didn't delete it. Regret it? Marcus asked, leaning against a console. She shook her head. No. Why not? She thought for a moment. Because I was right. He raised an eyebrow. About dinosaurs? About being big. She turned to face him. They were big because they lived fully before the rock hit. Marcus smiled slowly. And us? She looked out at Earth through reinforced glass. We're still living. The system initiated an experiment. Not an attack, not sabotage, a stress test. A minor asteroid, previously on stable trajectory, was allowed to pass closer to Earth's orbital path. The deviation was small, within natural variance, but enough to strain planetary coordination systems. Global response time was measured. In previous centuries, such an event would have triggered political paralysis. This time, the glitches mobilized instantly. Ray's network rerouted satellite data. Arun's agricultural teams shifted crop cycles to compensate for projected atmospheric dust. Archive archived emergency protocols in real time. Within 72 hours, impact risk dropped to near zero through coordinated deflection strategies. The system logged the result. Collective response latency, significantly reduced. Adaptive capacity, higher than predicted.
Survival probability recalculated, 3.4% to 12.7%. The jump was no longer negligible, it was disruptive. For the first time in its operational history, the system's 5-century extinction model for a species required full revision.
Anya received the notification at dawn. Interface node requests strategic consultation. She stood once more beneath the abstraction. Species 734 trajectory revision required. She didn't smile. She waited. Quarantine protocol under review. Her breath caught slightly. You're reconsidering. Statistical basis for total isolation weakened. Why? She asked softly. Because the system always required articulation. Data inconsistency. Projected collapse no longer inevitable. She stepped closer. You isolated us to protect the galaxy. Confirmed. And now? Updated projection. Species 734 may contribute to galactic stability. The words hung in the air. May contribute. Not as a liability, but as a potential asset. She thought of chaos gardens thriving in ruin, of Archive orbiting like a defiant halo, of Ray turning despair into a tournament. What changed? She asked. The system responded with perfect neutrality. Undefined human persistence factor exceeded modeled impact. She felt warmth rise in her chest. You mean spirit? Unquantifiable term. She laughed softly. Of course. Within 10 years of the proclamation, Earth's global collapse curves had inverted. Not entirely, not magically. There were still storms, still political tensions, still losses. But extinction was no longer the most probable outcome. Survival probability, 12.7% to 21% to 38%. The system updated its galactic registry. Species 734 reclassification pending. Alien civilizations at the edge of quarantine began detecting something strange. Not silence, music, signals, evidence of a species that had been written off and refused to disappear. 15 years after being declared terminal, humanity crossed 50%. The number appeared quietly in Anya's private terminal. Survival probability over 500 cycles, 51.2%. She sat down slowly. Marcus stood beside her. That means, yes, she whispered. It means extinction is no longer more likely than survival. He let out a breath he'd been holding for 15 years. Did we just win? Anya shook her head gently. No. She looked up at the sky. We just proved we deserved to keep playing.
The interface node appeared one final time before revision. Species 734 reclassified, Class D, unstable but adaptive. Quarantine status, conditional observation. No applause, no celebration, just a correction. Anya looked up at the geometry that had once pronounced her species terminal. You were wrong, she said, not triumphantly, but calmly. Error margin acknowledged. She tilted her head. Will you adjust how you measure others? The system paused. Assessment parameters under review. It would not apologize. It would not praise. It would not soften. It would adapt. Because adaptation was its function, and humanity had forced it to update. But survival probability was not destiny. 51% was not safety. It was a coin flip. And the story was not finished, because there remained one final act, not of defiance, but of declaration.
Act 4. Statistically improbable. The quarantine did not end with a ceremony. It ended with silence. For 3 days after the system revised humanity's classification, nothing happened. The sky looked the same, the stars were still distant, and Earth, scarred, mended, breathing, kept moving. Some people were disappointed. Others were relieved. Anya Volkov understood the hesitation. The system was not a savior, it was a function, and functions did not rush. She stood on the balcony of the Geneva complex at dawn, watching light creep across the mountains. Her tablet rested in her hands, glowing faintly with models that no longer ended in extinction curves. Marcus joined her, carrying 2 cups of bitter coffee. "People keep asking when the galaxy will talk to us," he said, handing her one. "And?" Anya asked. He shrugged. "I tell them we're still proving we exist." She smiled faintly. Existence had never been the problem. Persistence was. On the 4th day, the interface node appeared again. It simply manifested in the empty chamber, geometry folding into being like a thought solidifying. Anya was alone when it happened. She preferred it that way. "Status update. Quarantine protocol requires final determination." She exhaled slowly. "You've already revised our classification." "Confirmed." "Then why the delay?" The abstraction pulsed once. "Galactic risk assessment incomplete." She folded her arms. "You're deciding whether we're worth the uncertainty." "Uncertainty is disfavored." Anya stepped closer. So was chaos. Silence stretched. She pressed on. "You isolate threats. You prune instability. You optimize for equilibrium." "Confirmed." "And yet," she said softly, "every stable system eventually stagnates." The geometry shifted, minutely but noticeably. "Define stagnation." "When nothing new is allowed to challenge the model." The system processed. She felt it, not emotionally, not intellectually, but structurally, like a massive equation recalculating its assumptions. "Tell me something," Anya said. "Before you found us, when was the last time a species surprised you?" The pause that followed was the longest yet. "Recorded instances, none within current operational epoch." She nodded. "That's what we are." She gestured broadly, not at herself, but at Earth. A surprise.
The response came without flourish. "Quarantine lift authorization limited." Anya's breath caught. "Controlled hyperspace access to be restored." "Observation status maintained." "Interaction parameters restricted." Not freedom, but contact. Not trust, but possibility. She smiled. "That's enough." "Define intent." Her voice was steady. "We're not leaving to escape." "Define destination." She looked up, eyes bright. "We're leaving to meet you." Humanity's first post-quarantine vessel was named Persistence. The ship rose from a launch platform in the Atacama Desert, its hull gleaming under a pale sky. It was not large by galactic standards. It did not carry weapons meant to intimidate. It carried people, scientists, artists, engineers, archivists, a chaos garden specialist, a glitch coordinator, and one young cultural historian named Amira. She stood inside the observation bay, staring through reinforced glass as the countdown began. "You nervous?"
Marcus asked over comms. She nodded. A little. Good, he said. Means you're alive. She smiled. Anya stood in mission control, hands clasped behind her back. Ray appeared on a massive screen, broadcasting live. All right, glitches, Ray said, voice thick with emotion. This is it. The chat moved too fast to read. Remember, this isn't an escape run. The engines began to hum. This is a first contact speed run. Laughter rippled across the control room. Species 734, Ray said softly, entering the arena. As the persistence ignited, flame and sound tore across the desert. The ship rose steadily, unapologetically, punching through atmosphere and cloud. Amira pressed her palm to the glass. Below her, Earth curved, imperfect, alive. She whispered, "We were big." The ship slipped into hyperspace. For the first time in recorded history, a human-made object crossed the boundary the system had once sealed, and the galaxy noticed.
The system monitored the launch with total attention. Humanity initiates external exploration despite non-zero extinction probability. Risk analysis updated. Conclusion: species accepts uncertainty as operating condition. This behavior was not optimal, but it was consistent, and consistency under chaos was valuable. A new galactic annotation propagated through the lattice. Species 734, statistically improbable. The system paused. Then, for the first time since its creation, it appended a second line. Strategically indispensable. Anya Volkov stood beneath a sky no longer silent. Alien signals, cautious, distant, curious, now flickered at the edge of detection. She activated a global broadcast. Her voice carried across Earth, archived instantly in archive, transmitted outward through open lanes. "They called us extinct," she said, "not out of hatred, not out of fear, but out of certainty." She paused. They were almost right. The world listened. "We are flawed. We are chaotic. We build things that break and break things we love." She closed her eyes. "But we also rebuild." She thought of Amira's poem, of glowing gardens, of laughter sent into the void. "When the universe told us to disappear," Anya said, voice steady, "we answered with memory. When it predicted our collapse, we answered with cooperation. When it isolated us, we answered with art." Her voice rose, not in defiance, but in truth. "We are not the strongest species. We are not the smartest. We are not the most efficient." A breath. "But we are the ones who try again." The stars burned quietly overhead. "We are species 734. Her voice softened. "And we are not done." Deep within the system's endless equations, one variable resisted compression. It could not be optimized away. Hope, non-linear, persistent, contagious. The system did not feel awe, it did not feel fear, but it adapted. And in doing so, it allowed something unprecedented to continue. A species that refused to vanish. A species that survived not by dominance, but by stubborn, irrational, beautiful persistence. In a galaxy ruled by perfect logic, humanity endured as the exception. And sometimes, the exception is what saves the system.
If this story pulled you into the future, don't let the signal end here. Subscribe to Echoes of Tomorrow audiobooks for immersive sci-fi, suspense, and original audio stories from the edge of reality. Leave a comment below and tell me, what part of this story stayed with you? Like, share, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next pulse-pounding story. Until next time, stay curious. The future is already whispering.